Just before midnight, a single sheet of Buckingham Palace letterhead slipped onto the royal website, and Britain inhaled as one. Their Majesties have agreed to dissolve their marriage in mutual respect. 47 words, no blame, no hint of cause, yet the thunderclap was deafening. Street-side newsstands sold out in minutes, and by dawn, the phrase royal divorce was trending on 5 continents. But behind that curt notice lies a story decades in the making, one that began as a forbidden romance and may now end as the biggest constitutional cliffhanger since Edward VIII walked away with Wallace. According to aides, Charles signed the paperwork hours before boarding his helicopter to Sandringham, refusing even a private jet, lest cameras guess the gravity of his errand. Courtiers say he wanted consummate brevity, a break as swift as it is seismic. Reporters camped outside Clarence House describe lights burning until 3 a.m., proof that royal lawyers were still hashing out titles, residences, and, most delicately, the question of whether Camilla remains queen consort in name only. The speed stunned even seasoned palace correspondents. One veteran whispered, "We braced for a health bulletin, not this." Yet the statement left another puzzle. Why now? Charles's coronation is barely in the rearview mirror. Traditionally, a monarch keeps turbulence private for the sake of national steadiness. That rule just shattered. But to grasp the shock, we have to rewind to where this royal roller coaster began. Charles and Camilla first crossed paths at a polo match half a century ago, bonding over a shared love of horses, history, and slightly irreverent humor. When he shipped out with the Royal Navy, she married someone else, yet their friendship smoldered on. By the late 80s, it had erupted into Britain's worst kept secret. Princess Diana's now iconic 1995 TV interview confirmed suspicions and painted Camilla as the third person in our marriage. Public loathing spiked. Crowds booed whenever her name surfaced. Tabloid headline writers dubbed her everything from homewrecker to the rot in the rose. For Camilla, each wave of press felt like walking into a gale without an umbrella. Even after the 2005 wedding, acceptance came slowly. Royal watchers recall how Camilla's first official walkabout drew icy silence, broken only by a single shout, "We still miss Diana!" Yet perseverance, charity work, and a deliberate charm offensive helped thaw the frost. By their 20th anniversary this spring, Camilla's approval ratings had finally crept above 50%. Few imagined it was the calm before another cyclone. One clue hid in plain sight: they often lived apart. Every Friday, Camilla slipped west to Ray Mill House, her country bolt hole wrapped in 17 acres of lush Wiltshire hills. There she hosted grandchildren, tended roses, and, as insiders put it, left teacups unwashed without a footman scolding the mess. Charles, meanwhile, preferred Highgrove or the bustle of Clarence House, surrounding himself with gardeners, artists, and advisors. Even under the same roof, they chose separate bedrooms, a practice whispered about in many aristocratic circles, but rarely publicized. At first, the arrangement seemed practical. 2 introverts carving breathing room inside Britain's brightest spotlight. Yet lately, friends admitted the weekends apart stretched longer, phone calls shorter, and the once nightly check-ins dwindled to polite texts about upcoming engagements. Then came Charles's cancer diagnosis, confirmed by the palace this winter. Treatments forced him to pare back overseas tours, delegate investitures, even postpone a long-planned trip to Australia. One courtier confided that the king saw his own hourglass and felt a fire to modernize the crown quickly. Slimmed-down patronages, transparent finances, fewer working royals. But modernization meant tough conversations, and sources say Camilla favored slower evolution. She had invested 2 decades rehabilitating her public role. Why gamble it now? With every policy memo that landed on the breakfast tray, tension ticked higher. Charles's aides recall breakfasts eaten in silence, one carefully folding the Times, the other scrolling headlines about plummeting approval ratings. A marriage built on quiet understanding was suddenly buzzing with competing timetables, and the clock was louder than ever. Add to that the palace rumor mill, whisper-thin reports of Camilla wielding kingmaker sway, vetoing staff appointments or lobbying for causes Charles called merely interesting footnotes. Tabloids dredged up an ancient allegation that in 2008, Charles caught Camilla growing too close to a female friend and briefly threatened divorce. The couple publicly laughed it off, but the $250 million settlement figure splashed across front pages lodged in public memory. More recently, Princess Anne is said to have bristled when Camilla requested larger quarters at Balmoral, while Prince William allegedly balked at her suggestion to rebrand some duchies. Whether these stories are kernels of truth or tabloid fertilizer, they added smoke to an already simmering fire. And whenever smoke curls over the palace roof, the sons inevitably feel the heat. Prince William now walks the finest tightrope of his life. On one hand, he owes unflinching support to a father whose reign is scarcely underway. On the other, he must shield his own young family from the fallout. Advisors say he's pressing for a dignified silence, yet privately urging Charles to settle property questions fast so the Wales household isn't drawn into a spectacle. Across the Atlantic, Harry's reaction is predictably unpredictable. Hint, he views the split as proof that palace life crushes genuine relationships. Whether he speaks publicly or lets Netflix do the talking, the divorce widens a rift already canyon deep. With cameras pointed at every palace gate, royal PR chiefs face their worst nightmare, a narrative they cannot spin as private family matter. The Crown's old strategy, issue one statement, ride out the storm, doesn't work in the TikTok age. Memes comparing Charles to Henry VIII exploded within hours. Opinion polls show 48% sympathize with the king's right to personal happiness, but 62% worry the monarchy looks unstable. Even Buckingham Palace quietly reminds viewers that The Crown is drama, not documentary, an echo of their 2022 warning when the series tackled Charles's first divorce. So where does a 7 centuries-old institution go from here? Charles could push ahead with his leaner monarchy vision, streamlined, personal, less ceremonial. Or the divorce might sap public goodwill, forcing him to retreat into tradition just to keep the ship steady. Camilla's future title, the handling of royal estates, even who sits nearest the king at state banquets, all suddenly matter far more than table etiquette. One thing is indisputable. The fairy tale ending many hoped for has rewritten itself overnight. The king who spent a lifetime waiting for the crown now confronts the loneliest chapter of that story, reigning without the partner who once made the wait bearable. And as Britain watches for the next press release, historians are already jotting the first line of the chapter that follows Queen Elizabeth's age of constancy. It began with a midnight divorce, and nothing, from that point on, was ever quite the same.